Danish deception part 7. So he tells me that he needs to get a back surgery and he does not want me to come to Denmark because he wants me to meet his parents with him there because there's a serious language barrier and he wants to make sure that I can communicate with them through him. And he's like, I don't want you to be using Google Translate to talk to them the first time you meet them. And and at first I was really upset because I felt like he wasn't treating me like I was his family. And I remember having a conversation with my mom about it because I was really frustrated. And she asked me, she said, do you think his parents know about you? And I remember I got really defensive because I told her, in what world would his parents not know about me? And I told him, I really want to be there. I was still kind of like pushing on him for like the full day. And I remember like that was like one of our first like little fights. At this point, we had not fight at all. Like we have not had a single fight in the last 4 months because it's December of 2022. And so I told him, I said, listen, I really want to be there for you. And he was like, honestly, I don't want to like fight about this anymore. Like, let's just put this to rest. And I remember being frustrated because I also didn't have plans for Christmas because my family was going to be traveling and I had planned to spend Christmas with him. So I remember I reached out to my best friend, Natalie. I was talking to her about the situation. She said, why don't you fly to New York, spend a couple days with me, and then we'll go spend Christmas in Boston with my family. And I said, okay, like we can do that. And so I brought up the option to my ex. He said, I think that's a great idea. I obviously don't want you to spend Christmas by yourself. And so I said, okay, that works. And I'm obviously extremely sad because at this point I hadn't seen him in weeks. And now I don't know when I'm going to see him again because he's getting this surgery on December 21st. So I made plans, booked my flight to New York, and a couple of days before I leave, he told me, maybe what we can do is you can come to Denmark maybe a couple days after my back surgery because the doctors say that I need to be up walking a couple days afterwards, and I think it's just my mom that's gonna come. So what we can do is you can come meet my mom and we can go see like the Christmas lights, and at that point, I'll be able to translate and everything. And so I said, that's fine. So I was like, I'll fly to New York, go to Boston, spend Christmas with my friend Natalie. And then I'll also have like an extra bag packed for like things to wear in Copenhagen and just make sure I'm prepared to figure out what the plan is whenever he tells me. And so I think we had decided that it was December like 26th or 27th that I was going to go to Copenhagen and then spend like a week there. So I go to New York, have a great couple days with my friend Natalie, and then on like the second day I'm in New York, I get a message from him, and he said, oh my goodness, my dad's back in the hospital. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry to hear that. He's like, his infection numbers are bad again, his blood poisoning again, and he ended up getting diagnosed with leukemia. And I just, I wanted to be there for him. And I said, do you want me to come? Like, I want to be there for you. Like, I don't want you to feel like you have to navigate through these things without having like your partner there to support you. And he said, right now, I just need to like focus on my family, and I'm grateful for you to be here, but I also don't want you to meet my dad for the first time in a hospital bed. And I'm obviously frustrated because I really want to be there for him, but I also don't want to be too pushy because I'm like, this is your family, your dad's in the hospital. I don't want to put too much on him. And so we made the decision that I was just going to be kind of like on standby, which was fine because I was with my best friend, Natalie, and I love her so much. And so I was having honestly a wonderful time with her and her family. And so we had left New York, went to Boston. Obviously, I'm still in constant communication with him, trying to figure out what's happening. And he sends me a message. I think it's on December 23rd. He sends me a message and he says, I'm so angry. I just got into a fight with my sister. And maybe like 5 minutes later, he gives me a call and I'm like, what happened? He said, we're sitting in the hospital room and my dad is obviously laying in the bed and my older sister looks to me and says, so where are you spending Christmas? And I said, not with you, bitch. And it turned into a huge fight. They start screaming at each other in the hospital. He storms out. He feels so disrespected. His mom's upset. His little sister's upset because they're already spending some of their holidays in the hospital. And like now, like they have all this tension in the family. And so I remember just being like so confused as to like why his sister is like this awful person. Like, why is she treating you like this, especially at a time when your dad is not doing okay? And so he calls me, he's like, I'm just so upset. Like, I want to get away. And I said, well, let me know what you need from me. Like, I'm literally a plane ride away. And he said, well, I obviously, like, now that I'm like, don't want to be around my family, I would love to see you. And I said, okay, well, I can book a flight to Copenhagen and come stay with you. And he said, I don't know, I just kind of feel like I just need to get out of Denmark. And at that point, he was obviously in his hometown in Aalborg, which is 4 hours north of Copenhagen. And so he took a train back to Copenhagen. He's spending Christmas completely by himself, so sad. And we're still trying to iron out what the plans are. And he, again, tells me, I want to leave Denmark. And I was like, are you sure? Because at this point, like, I knew that I wouldn't say we were having like financial issues, but I knew like obviously there was like a little bit of tension with like all of his expenses that were adding up. And so I was like, it might be easier for me to just fly there and I can just stay with you. And he's like, I just really want to get away. And I said, okay, where do you want to go? He said, have you been to Paris before? And I said, no, I actually have not been to Paris. And he's like, well, let's do Paris. And I said, okay, I'm absolutely down to do Paris. And so I look at flights. I book a flight from Boston to Paris, the layover in Iceland, and I leave on the 26th, and I get to Paris on the 27th, and I see him. He meets me at the airport. We arranged our flights to make sure we landed around the same time. And something I need to add is before I had gone to Paris, he had told me that he had made a transfer from his business account to his personal account. And obviously in the States, when you make a transfer like that, it's just like a click of a button. Like I have a business account, it's a click of a button. But he told me that in Denmark, when you make a transfer from your business account to your personal account, it actually has to go through the IRS. They take out the taxes and then they deposit the money into your personal account. And I'm over here thinking like that's so crazy, but I also know like Denmark is a foreign country that I don't know anything about. I didn't question it for a second. And so he said, I'm just gonna ask my mom to give me a quick little loan so I can obviously cover everything with Paris and whatnot. And I said, okay, just let me know what she says. And then he basically came back to me and said, she said that she will only give me the money if I spend a couple more days with the family. I said, well, you should do that. Like, I don't want you to feel like I'm trying to take you away from your family by any means. And he said, I don't even want to be around them right now. It's just like not good for my mental health. And then I said, okay, well, what do you need from me? I said, I can cover like the flights and the hotels. It's not that big of a deal. And at that point we had been on 2 trips together, or no, we'd only been on 1 trip together to the south of France. And then Paris was going to be our 2nd trip. The rest of the times he had now visited me in Dallas 3 times. And so I told him, I said, I can pay for the flights and the hotels. It's not that big of a deal. He said, are you sure? I said, yeah, of course. He's like, I just don't know what I would do without you. Like, I just feel like I keep hitting these roadblocks and you are there to pick up the pieces every single time. And I'm so grateful for that. And I said, I'll always be there to support you. So now we can go back to landing in Paris. We meet at the airport and he told me, he's like, letting you know I'm not in the best mood. I've been just like really upset. And I said, I am here to make you happy. So we land in Paris, we see each other, we're so happy. And we had the most spectacular trip in Paris. Like we were just exploring. It was my first time there. And it was obviously I paid for a lot of that trip and he paid for a little bit of the trip too. So we both kind of paid. And keep in mind, he still owes me $6,000 at this point. I am not concerned about the money. I don't know why I should have been concerned. I should have been noticing these red flags like, bro, like, where's my money? But again, this is someone that I am planning on marrying, and money at this point, like money comes and goes, and I wasn't focused on that. I was just focused on us. So we finish our trip in Paris, say our goodbyes, and we start just, getting depressed as we always do when we say goodbye. And I board my flight to Dallas and he asked me, what are your thoughts on us meeting with an immigration attorney just to get an idea of what the process entails? And I said, absolutely, I would love to do that. Obviously, I had Googled and looked into a few things, but nothing concrete. At the time, one of my best friends was working part-time for immigration attorneys. So I reached out to her. I said, hey, can I get her contact information? And she said, yeah, of course. She gives me her contact information. And I call her, we set up a meeting, and obviously, still the time difference. He had a work trip in Norway that he was at. And at this point, also, little side note, we had started sharing our locations while we were in Paris. So I had his location at this point, and I could see that he was in Norway. And he also FaceTimed me from the hotel room. So he was in Norway, 100%. And we had a call with the lawyer, and we were discussing the process. And she tells us it's going to take 18 months for you guys to get all of this process after the time you get married. And I was like, 18 months? She's like, everything is super backed up because of COVID. I always want to let my clients know this stuff so that they are fully prepared. And I just felt like that sounded like such a long time. But we finished the conversation with the lawyer, and I then call my ex, and we're talking, debriefing on everything. And there's two different types of ways to get permanent residency in the United States. There's consular processing, and then there's another way where you basically apply for the visa and you're living in the States full time while you're processing the visa. So obviously, because he was still working a lot and traveling a lot for work, and because of his dad's health, we decided we would do consular processing, because why not? But then we start having the discussions on, okay, but the clock starts after we get married. And that's when he says, well, I would marry you tomorrow. And I was like, well, I would marry you tomorrow. And he was like, wait, really? And now the time has come for me to drop the first of many bombs on you guys. This man is actually not my ex-fiance. He is my ex-husband. So I will end right now, and we will pick back up in part 8. All right, so yeah, we were not just engaged, we were married, and we are now divorced. So once we made the decision to get married, I remember we had a phone call over the course of like 6 hours. In one day, we talked on the phone about all the things that we wanted to get out of life. We talked about kids, we talked about religion, we talked about everything. And at the end of that day, he told me, do you still want to get married? And I said, absolutely. I'm in love with you. I want to build a life with you. I want to have a family with you. So the decision was very, very simple. And so he already told me about a month prior that he had reached out to his realtor about putting out feelers about selling his home. Because at this point, now that we're getting married, he's like, I'm going to just try to spend as much time in Dallas as possible. And I was absolutely okay with that. And so in the beginning of January, he had told me that his realtor got an offer off market for his place. And I was like, that's great. And he was like, I'm going to probably take a loss. I'm just trying to get as much as my down payment back. And I was like, how much are you going to end up getting back? He said, probably around $500,000. I was like, well, that's, a good solid base for us to have. And I was more than okay with that. Keep in mind, he still does owe me money at this point. So they end up going under contract. The plan is for the house to sell by the end of January. And everything seemed like it was going smooth. And then one day he calls me and he tells me that he's had the worst day ever. And I'm like, oh, now what? He's frantic. He's like, there's a fire in the control room, the electrical control room at the apartment complex that he bought. And he's just like, I don't know what to do. He's like, there's no power. Like, no one has power. He's like, I just paid this guy $2,000 to bring generators to power up the whole entire apartment. I have an electrician coming. And he's like freaking out. And he basically used all of his money he had to put towards like the generators and paying the electrician for as much work as they could do. And I was like, okay, like what now? And he was like, I need help. At this point, he has now asked me for help. He said, can you send me $5,000? And I said, yeah, of course, I can help you. Again, love is a powerful drug. I hate myself. I hate this. I hate that I was so willing to help him, and it is what it is. But I sent him the $5,000. He tells me that his insurance is going to cover it. He's going to be able to pay me back. And also, like, I'm mindful of the fact that his house is supposed to close at the end of the month. And so a week go by and we start talking about plans for the wedding. And so at first we wanted to go to Vegas, And then we looked into it, and Denmark does not recognize wedding marriages that are done in Vegas, because you can get the marriage certificate and get married in the same day. Same thing with Colorado. Shout out to Denmark. I love that rule. But we're like, it's fine. We should just save money. Let's just do it in Dallas, and then we can go do a little weekend trip to Broken Bow, Oklahoma, which is like this cute lake town, and that can be our honeymoon. And he was like, okay, that works fine. We can do that. At this point, he has his flight booked to come back to Dallas in the end of January. Now we're in 2023. And he tells me that one of his really close friends that owns a plumbing business, and my ex was actually godfather of this man's son. This is confirmed. And he came to him and said that his partner in his business is like doing some like shady stuff. He's like scared that he's gonna get like implicated. He wants my ex to buy out his partner. And he's asking him for a loan of $250,000. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money. And this time he asked me, and you know, we're about to get married, so now I feel like I can insert my opinion about the situation. So I asked him, I'm like, is this just a handout, or is this gonna be a good investment? And he was like, well, I think it's gonna be a really good investment. Like, he has a bunch of ideas of how to expand the business. And to me, I was like, well, if you can help a friend and have a good investment, I think that that makes a lot of sense. And I, as you guys can already tell, I'm a very giving person. I've been very giving my entire life. I get it from my parents. They're very generous and selfless. And so when it comes to helping friends and family in need, I've always done it. If I can do it, I'll always do it. And so to me, I'm like, we have this money coming in. Let's invest it. And, you know, I own this house here, and we don't have any big purchases coming up, so it's okay. Like, I wasn't really stressed and pressed about it. And so basically I was like, okay, the house is gonna close at the end of the month, and then he'll be able to like pay me back the money that he owes me, and he'll be able to help his friend, and everything will be good to go. So he ends up coming back to Dallas. We get our marriage certificate. We set our wedding date for February 10th. And I remember the night before our wedding, he got really, really bad food poisoning, which I feel like should have been another sign that this was 100% the wrong decision to make. But instead I was like, hey, in sickness and in health, like, whatever happens, we're gonna make it through it. And at this point, he doesn't really have any money. I remember he looked at me, he goes, I'm sick, I'm broke, you wanna marry me still? I said, I don't care if you're sick and broke. I love you for you. And we're getting married, and I'm so excited and ready for it. So the morning of our wedding, obviously he couldn't afford a ring at that point. And so I remember he got on one knee. I like woke up that morning, and he's down on one knee next to the bed. And he was like, I know this isn't the proposal you dreamed of. And I promise you, I'm going to propose to you one day with a real ring, and we're going to share this with the world. But I want to ask you, will you marry me? And I said, absolutely, I will marry you. And so we went to the courthouse. I remember I was wearing a dress from Fashion Nova because I didn't care. I was just excited to marry my person. And we got married. And I mean, I truly thought this was one of the best days of my life. I was so happy. I was grinning so big. I still have the pictures and the videos from this day. And we went to Broken Bow afterwards. And we just had a great weekend in a little cabin in the woods. And it's just this cute lake town. So it's perfect. And we brought Smokey. I remember we got burgers. I made a lasagna. We just stayed in and hiked, and it was a really, really wonderful honeymoon. But after the wedding, he stayed in Dallas for about a week, and then he goes back to Denmark. And he had said that the house had closed and that he was just waiting for the funds. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay in Denmark. Again, I have no idea how this stuff works. And so while he's in Denmark, he says the funds came through. He transferred the money to his friend for the investment in the plumbing business. And he said that he was about to set up a transfer for me for the money he owed me, which was about $10,000 at that point. And so a couple weeks go by, I still haven't received the money. I'm not super pressed about it because I still am like fully trusting him at this point. And he ends up booking his flight to come back to visit in March. And this trip was a trip that my dad and my mom were coming back to Dallas to come visit. And he already planned to ask my dad for my hand in marriage. And so he's about to come visit, and he calls me maybe like a couple days before he's about to come to Dallas. And he said, I received the worst possible news today, and I will continue on in part 9. The Danish Deception, part 9. Okay. So he calls me and he tells me that he's had the worst news that he possibly could have. The IRS has told him that he owes $318,000 in taxes. In addition to that, his dad owes $12 million in taxes. And at this point, I did not have a lot of information about his family money because I've always been the type of person, like, if your parents have money, that means your parents have money. That does not mean you have money. So I didn't even ask details about his parents' finances, but obviously I'm like, if his parents owe $12 million in taxes, they got money. And he said that the person that was doing his taxes for years and years and also doing his dad's taxes was one of his childhood friends that owns an accounting firm. And he's like, we've been paying a lot of money in taxes over the years, so someone must be committing some sort of fraud at this point. And so I'm obviously freaking out. This is a lot of money that he owes. So he said, you know what? I'm going to use the rest of the proceeds from selling my home. And in addition to that, he told me at this point, he owns 3 different watches. He owns 2 Rolexes and a Patek watch, which if you're not a watch person, these are very expensive watches. And so a couple hours go by. He's like, I sold my Patek watch, and like he said, he sold it at a loss. He just needed to get the money. He said he's short about $30K. And so he tells me that he's going to reach out to his parents, and his parents are like, we don't care. Like, this is not our problem. This is your problem. Figure it out. And he starts to just like, continue spiraling. And so he tells me he's going to reach out to 2 of his childhood friends, one of which he was with this friend whenever we met in Croatia. So I knew they've been friends for a while, and then another childhood friend. And he told me, I've helped out these friends so much in the past, and it's almost like he was communicating to me that he was owed this money from them. I've never asked friends for money before, so this is like not anything that I'm comfortable with, but I was like, hey, if you feel comfortable doing this, go for it. I had not offered him a cent. So he comes back, says he's going to get $10,000 from one friend and then $5,000 from another friend. And I was like, that's so nice of them. He's like, I've honestly helped them so much in the past that like, I'm grateful that they're helping me when I'm in need. And so at this point, he's short $15,000. And so he just comes right out and asks me, like, can I borrow it? And I did not say yes right away. I said, listen, I have to pay my taxes too, because I was working at an accounting firm. Obviously that's W-2 income, but I was also doing real estate and I did very well the year before. So I owed a pretty penny in taxes, and it's March of 2023. So my taxes are coming up pretty soon. And so I told him, I'm like, I'm not comfortable giving you this money because, like I have to pay taxes too. And now my savings is like really starting to like, I'm starting to feel like the financial impact, and it's starting to stress me out. And he said, I hired a law firm. They've already looked into my tax records. They've already found indicators of fraud. I think I'm going to be able to get this turned around really quickly. And my biggest worry and concern is that if I don't pay this tax bill, it's going to affect my chances of getting a green card. And that's when I start to panic. And now I realize that I was just in a very toxic cycle of emotional manipulation. But after some time, he talks me into loaning him the $15,000. And I remember I only could send him like $3K at a time. And so I remember it was like over like the course of 5 days. And like every day he'd be like, hey, don't forget to send the payment. And everything about this felt so wrong in my soul, but I did it anyways. And this was not something that I kept quiet about. Like I told my parents, I told my siblings, like, my ex got this crazy tax bill, and they were all aware that we were going through this like financial hiccup, and I didn't like want to be presented as these people with money. So I was very upfront and honest about it. And like you can ask a lot of my friends, like I told a lot of my close people about this situation. And quick side note, I did not tell them that I was loaning him money. I just told them that he owed a lot of money, and I told them about the overall situation. But at this point, no one knows that I have given him any money. So I ended up giving him the money. He's so grateful. He's like, thank you so much for helping me out. And so about like 5 days later, he flies to Dallas to come and visit. And my parents came to visit maybe a couple days after he came. And at this point, he's staying in the living room, not in the bed with me, but he could not go to a hotel because we're like trying to be mindful with spending. So my parents definitely started to bond with my ex a lot more over this trip. Like I remember my dad brought him this Nigerian Igbo cane that my ex had been admiring, that my dad had one. He surprised him, brought him one from Nigeria. And he actually took my dad out and asked him for my hand in marriage, even though we were already married. And my dad said yes. And my dad also broke coconut in front of the family and like welcomed my ex into the family. It's just, I mean, it was really special. Obviously, we were dealing with a lot of financial stress, but I want you all to know that like I was happy a majority of the time, regardless of the stress I was going through, which is just insane to understand. But after a week, we ended up going to Cabo for one of my childhood friends' wedding. And I had paid for the portion of the wedding already because I had been planning on going by myself. And then obviously I got into a relationship. So I just had to pay like a little extra to add someone to the reservation. But we decided to go a couple days early and celebrate like our honeymoon. And so basically our flight comes and he's staying in the living room. My parents are sleeping in the guest bedroom. And I wake up and I get a text from him and he says, "Hey, can you come downstairs real quick?" And I said, "Of course." So I go downstairs. I'm like, "What's up?" He said, one of my friends, the friend that he had received $5,000 from for the tax bill, reached out to me and said he's freaking out because his wife really wants to buy this house and he's short a certain amount of money to purchase this home. And obviously he was like, "I feel so bad because he loaned it to me because he was trying to help me out." And my biggest strength and weakness is empathy. And when I saw him hurting because his friend was not able to do something because of the money he had loaned my ex, and at this point I felt like the friend had loaned us the money. It wasn't like he loaned my ex the money because we were married. And so I do something so stupid and idiotic. I end up loaning him an additional $3,000, not even a week after I had already given him $15,000. So I actually ended up giving him $18,000 in the month of March of 2023. Yes, I'm sick to my stomach. So I can send him the money. We end up going to the airport, fly to Cabo. We have an amazing trip. And at this point, I had just hard launched him on my Instagram Valentine's Day prior. So at this point, I hard launched him after we were already married. And we were in Cabo and I'm like posting more photos of him on my social media. And I'm going through my Instagram story views and I'm looking at the names and I'm seeing all of these Danish names. And I can tell they're Danish names because there's a different Danish alphabet. And so I'm clicking some of the profiles and a lot of them you can see like my ex is like the mutual, like follows them. And so I brought it up to him like, "Hey, all these Danish people are watching my story." But I thought it was weird that no one was like following me. I'm like, "These are your friends." Like, and I wanted him to maintain the same friendships in Denmark, even though he was moving to the States, because I never want to be the type of person that takes a man away from like his friends and family. And so I remember I'm clicking profiles and I click a girl's profile and I look at the first picture and I see my ex's dog. And that's something that I actually haven't mentioned. My ex did have a dog, and every time he came to visit, he had a friend that was watching the dog. And whenever he sold his place and decided that he was going to spend more time in Dallas, his dog ended up getting adopted by some people because he's like, "I just am not home enough." And at first I told him like, "Bring the dog to Dallas." Like I wanted the dog to come. He's like, "No, it's fine. Like that does not make sense to do." And I supported his decision. And he told me that the ex could not take the dog because she was in med school and was constantly out of the home and she just did not have the capacity to take care of the dog. But I see his dog and it's like a duck-toller retriever. I think that's how you say it. I saw his dog as a puppy on this girl's profile and I clicked the tag and my ex is tagged. And so I look at him, I go, "Is this your ex-girlfriend?" He was like, "Oh yeah, it is." I was like, "Oh, so she's watching my stories." He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay, that's a little weird." And I remember checking like throughout the course of like every day for like a week and like all these Danish people are still watching my story every day. And I'm like, "Don't you think this is weird that there's like 15 Danish people watching my story every day?" And he was like, "Honestly, I just feel like they're a little bit salty that I like moved on. I'm moving to America. Like I think they might be a little salty." And he said, "You should just block them all. Like I'm not gonna lie, this is like a very toxic group of people." And so I was like, "Is that what you want me to do?" He said, "Yeah, just block them all. Like they're not here for the right reasons. They're just looking to like creep and they're probably just talking a bunch of shit." So I said, "Okay." And I decided to block them all. And so basically, we come back from Cabo. He stays for about a month, and then he goes back to Denmark. And at this point, he had come to visit me so many times. And so I decided, you know, now's my time to go spend time with him in Europe. And with his dad's health and his work, it made sense for me to just, you know, go out of my way to try to spend time with him. And I could work remote at the time. And so I board a flight and I head to Denmark for the first time. And I land in Denmark, and I will continue on in part 10. The Danish Deception, part 10. So I land in Denmark after a couple of layovers, and my ex is waiting after baggage claim. He's waving a Danish flag, and I'm just so excited to be in Denmark for the first time. And so we land, we go to one of his friends' homes because we're staying there for the night. We change, and we go directly to an Easter lunch with him and all of his childhood friends. So I walk in, and everyone is just so nice. And it's his childhood friends and like their wives and girlfriends. And everyone was just super kind to me. We were drinking, having fun. After a while, I was super jet lagged. So we ended up going back to his friend's house. That's where we stayed that night. And the following day, he gives me the hometown tour. So he shows me where he got baptized. He shows me his elementary school, and we're just exploring. And I just feel so grateful to like see his roots, see where he grew up. And after the day of exploring, we go to his parents' house, and this is my first time meeting his parents, and I am so nervous. I've always done really well with parents, but this is, you know, different situation because number one, there's not a whole lot of Black people in Denmark, so they're not used to meeting people that look like me. Also, this man has made it very clear that he's moving to America, so you can only imagine how a mother might feel about the woman that's moving her son 5,000 miles away. So I was really nervous, but I'm not even kidding. The second I walked in, me and his mom instantly connected. And I think we bonded over our mutual love for my ex. And so it was his parents and his sister and her boyfriend that she had just recently started dating. We're all at this dinner. She cooked a very traditional Danish meal. It's called flæskesteg. I remember I had seconds, I had thirds. I think that made her fall in love with me even more because what mother doesn't want a girl that's going to eat their food? And so I brought her like a bunch of gifts, her and his father. I brought them gifts from Dallas, and we just really bonded that first day. She brought out all these photo albums and was showing me like my ex's childhood photos, and it was a really special night. And I remember my ex kept being like, are you sure you're okay with staying here? Because one thing I will say is they lived in a very humble home. And listen, I know there's billionaires out there that drive Honda Civics, so I don't judge. I'm never the type of person being like, why are you guys staying in this small house? Spend your money the way you want to spend your money. So I didn't think anything of it, but I was a little bit surprised. And also Denmark is not the type of place that has all these like big houses. Like a lot of the homes are small regardless of if you have money. But again, didn't think anything of it. So we have a great dinner. The following day, we start going and having these like day trips all over Denmark and going to explore. And it's always me, my ex, and his parents. And one day we went to this area called Skagen, which is the most northern part of Denmark. And it's really beautiful. And it was just fun to go and explore. And we're driving home, and my ex starts yelling at his dad. His dad is yelling back. They just start going at it. And obviously they're speaking Danish. I have no clue what they're saying. My ex pulls over. He gets out of the car, storms out, starts like walking away. I get out of the car. I chase after him. I'm like, what's happening? What's happening? And he was like, my dad basically just said that he's over today. He just wants to go back and watch his game. And I was like, and he basically said he was really upset because he felt like his dad wasn't making an effort to get to know me. And that's when I realized that him and his dad had a really toxic relationship. And I also noticed that like they basically exchanged like 1 to 2 sentences a day. I also noticed that he wasn't as close with his sister, his little sister, because I mean, they would talk all the time. And so I thought that was a little strange too. But I don't know, I'm still trying to really understand this family dynamic. But what I do know is that he's a mama's boy. He's close with his mom, which, that was really important to me. There were a few things that I took away from this trip. The first being that he is a little bit embarrassed of his family's home. He kept saying, do you want to go stay in a hotel or Airbnb? Do you want to stay here? And I'm like, why would we not stay here? Like, if I went to go visit my parents and I wanted to stay in an Airbnb, they'd be devastated. I was like, of course we're staying here. And he was like, I know it's not like nice. It's a super old house. They haven't renovated it. Like, I don't understand. They have all this money. Like, why don't they do it? I'm like, it's fine. Like, don't worry. We'll be okay. Another thing I noticed was that I did not meet the older sister. No one spoke of her. And I knew at this point she had one kid at this point. So they talked about her a little bit, but it was kind of like the elephant in the room. Like, no one really talked about it. And, you know, I know they don't have a relationship. They can't be with each other in intimate settings. But overall, like, I did have a good trip with him despite the tension. So after a week, we traveled to Copenhagen. And I remember getting to Copenhagen and I'm immediately just so happy to be there because this city exceeded my expectations. It's a beautiful, beautiful city. And we ended up staying in a hotel, like a cheaper hotel by the water. And I can stay anywhere. I'm good. I don't need to stay anywhere bougie. And I remember him being like, I hate that we have to stay here. Like, it's not nice. I'm like, I don't care. Like, we have a bed. We have a place to stay. It's okay. And so we spent that whole week just exploring Copenhagen, and then we get ready to travel to Nigeria for my grandmother's burial. And so at this point, we're staying in this hotel, and I remember there was like a laundromat at this hotel, so I was doing laundry, and he said, I'm going to go and get a few things for my storage unit, because he's moved out of his place at this point. He has a storage unit. And so he comes back home, and he has like this Rolex box, and he's like, oh, this is one of my Rolexes. I want to show it to you. And at this point, I had already seen his steel, the Batman. I already had seen that watch. He had brought it out for Cabo. So I've seen one of his watches. To Patek, he sold. I never saw it. So now this is the second watch he's bringing out. And he opens it. And it's, again, I did not know anything about watches before this, but now I know it's a day-date presidential watch with a green face. So he ends up telling me this is like a $50,000 watch. I was like, this is nice. And keep in mind, we're about to leave for Nigeria in like a day. And I'm like, why'd you bring it out? And he's like, oh, I'm going to bring it to Nigeria. I go, you're going to do what? And he's like, I'm bringing it to Nigeria. I'm like, you cannot bring a $50,000 watch to Nigeria. And he's like, yeah, I can. And I'm like, this does not make sense. And he said, no, like, this is a special occasion. Like, I want to bring it out for this. And so I told him, okay, I feel very uncomfortable, especially like us being in the village and you're wearing this like expensive watch. You're just asking yourself to get robbed. I just did not understand it, but whatever. He ends up packing the watch. We get ready and we hop on a flight to go to Nigeria and meet my family for my grandmother's burial. Keep in mind, he had paid for all the hotels, everything in Denmark, and he paid for all the hotels and flights for Nigeria. And so we hop on a plane, go to Nigeria. I'm super nervous because I just don't know what to expect and how he's going to react. But we meet up with my family, and he does so well. And it was funny because everyone wanted to take photos with him, and he was meeting my extended family, like my grandmother. I never thought I would bring a man home to meet my grandmother. I felt like I fell deeper in love with him, watching him just immerse himself in my culture and be there for my family while we put my grandmother to rest. And it was just a really amazing, beautiful trip. Honestly, there was nothing crazy that happened. And he tells me while we're in Nigeria that the law firm has settled the issue with his taxes and they're filing a document for the accounting firm to pay out a settlement, and it'll be paid out soon. And then he'll be able to transfer me the money that I'm owed. And so I'm like, oh, I'm breathing deeply. And it's awkward because I want to bring it up to him all the time, but he's also paying for everything. So I feel like I don't want to put too much pressure on him, even though I should have. So we come back to Denmark, and at this point, we are trying to figure out what our plan is, when we're going to come back to the States. And he says, you know what, like, let's just go back to my parents' house in my hometown. They were actually on a vacation, so the house was empty, and we can figure out what we want to do next. And I said, okay, that sounds good. So we go to his parents' house, and at this point, I'm still working remote. So I remember I was at the dining table working, and he walks up to me, and he says, I have some really, really good news. I was like, what's up? He said, my realtor just reached out to me and said there's a very wealthy family that is interested in purchasing this apartment complex. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best news in the world. And he said, there is one caveat, and I will continue on in part 11. Part 11. Okay, so he tells me that his realtor has found a buyer for this apartment complex, and there's one caveat. So apparently it's a very wealthy family. He did not know who this wealthy family was, but this family, the way they draft up the contracts, whenever they have to buy a property for tax purposes, and there's like a certain cutoff for when they need to acquire a property, they have like their own contract drafted up that basically requires the buyer and the seller to put money into escrow, so that if the seller changes their mind of selling the house, they get liquidated damages. Basically, make sure the deal goes through. I have never experienced anything like this in my real estate career. Obviously, Denmark is a different country. I didn't really know how real estate worked there. So not only is it different rules and guidelines, but it's also, I've never worked with like a super ultra wealthy family before to understand that this might be a requirement or something added in their contracts. And so I remember being like, how much is it going to be? And he's like, oh, it's going to be like $120,000. I remember just like being like, well, we don't have this money. Like, there's no way we can make this work. And so he said, I'm going to be able to come up with a loan, get a loan from a bank. I've already called them. I can get a loan from them for like $100,000. So we're just going to be short another amount. And at this point, my accounts are dwindling. And because I was in this long distance relationship, I was not focused on doing real estate at all. Like, I had taken a full step back from real estate. But I did have a career where I was making well over 6 figures. So I still was like making a pretty steady income. But my savings had been dwindling down. So I didn't have a whole lot of money left. So I remember at this point, he's like, we should make this deal work. And I'm seeing this as a way to get out of our financial position. And let me just say, my ex, if he wasn't such a narcissistic psychopath, he'd be such a great actor, because the way he sold this stuff to me, like, it was insane. So I remember he said that he was going to take his watches to a store to see if he could get it sold within 24 hours. Obviously, that might be kind of difficult. And so at this point, he's like, how much money do you have? And I was like, I really don't have a whole lot of money to give you. So I remember I gave him like a small amount, maybe like $3,000, because I wanted to make sure I had enough money for like bills and miscellaneous. So I just wanted to have a little bit of cushion. And I was getting stressed out, but he ended up coming up with the money. He says the deal goes through and that it's going to close in 6 weeks. And so he tells me what I think I'm going to do is switch my address from Denmark to the States, especially since I have been living in the States more, and I'll be able to save money on taxes. And at this point, I was like, is this tax evasion? He goes, this is absolutely not tax evasion, because I am spending more time in Dallas than I am in Denmark. And I said, okay, well, if you've done research and you feel certain about this, then I believe you. So the deal goes through. It says it's going to close in 6 weeks. And so he said, we should take a trip to celebrate. And I'm like, we don't have any money. And he was like, well, we can just use your credit cards, because, you know, like, we'll be able to pay it off whenever the money hits. And this is probably one of the most like idiotic decisions I made. Y'all don't have to tell me this is stupid. I'm fully aware. But we ended up going to Portugal for a week, and we used my credit cards the majority of this trip. He had a little bit of money, because keep in mind, he is working as chief commercial officer for this tech company. And that was 100% real. And he was making about $400,000 a year. Again, 100% real. I, at certain times, have verified the money hitting his account from his company. So he's making money, even though we're having a lot of financial stress. He's still bringing in a steady income. I'm still bringing in a steady income. So he was able to pay a little bit of the trip, and I was able to pay a little bit of the trip. So we go to Portugal. We had the most spectacular week. I remember that was the week that I decided I want to get married in this country. I love it here. It's so beautiful. I was working still at this time, and with the time difference, I was basically working from like 5 to midnight. And there was one day while we were in Portugal that I was just complaining about working. I'm like, I'm so over this job and I'm not happy with what I'm doing. I was just complaining about it. And he just said, why don't you quit? And I remember looking at him like, what do you mean quit? And he said, well, we have this money coming in and I want you to be happy. I want you to do something that brings you joy, and real estate brings you joy. And I really hadn't been doing a whole lot of real estate that year. And so I told him, I said, well, it's going to be like kind of a transition. I'm not going to be making a lot of money at first. He said, well, you're going to have a cushion. And luckily I make money. I'm going to be able to afford all the bills and you can just focus on building your business back up. And so I was like, are you sure? He said, yes. And let me tell you, everything about this decision, it felt right, but it also felt wrong. And let me tell you, I do not regret quitting my job. I regret the timing because we were not in a great financial position and I was making like $150,000 a year at this job. So it was a very steady, stable income. And I trusted him to be my provider and that was stupid. And I have never relied on a man for anything in my entire life. And I will never do it again, like never in a million years. But you know, you live and you learn. And I made the decision to put in my 2 weeks notice. And yes, I know that was idiotic. Y'all don't have to tell me. And so we go to Portugal, come back to Denmark, and we're in Denmark for maybe a day. And then we travel back to Dallas. And at this point, your girl is hurting financially, because now I'm accruing like a little bit of credit card debt. My savings is like nothing. And at this point, I'm fully trusting him. And I believe him when he says, we are going to overcome this circumstance very, very, very soon. And keep in mind, at this point, I have not caught this man in a single lie. And obviously, I gave out my trust way too easily. But in my mind, I was thinking, why should I question him when he's never given me a reason to? Which is crazy because I feel like he was giving me all the reasons with all these red flags. But we go back to Dallas and I remember his sister and her boyfriend came to visit us for a week and we had a good time with them, but I felt like he was super annoyed with them the entire time. He was complaining. He was just like, I just feel like they're being super cheap. They don't want to do anything. And it just felt like, again, I thought him and his sister would be a lot closer. It was weird. So we have a great trip with them visiting us. And then we go to Miami and meet up with his best friend and his girlfriend. And this was the best friend he was with whenever I met him in Croatia. So we're in Miami and for the most part, we're using my funds for this trip because he's obviously put a lot of his money into, most of his money into this escrow account. And he paid for a little bit of stuff, but he didn't have a whole lot. And I'm expecting this money to hit like any day now. So a couple of days after Miami, we went to Denmark to celebrate his mom's 70th birthday. We had promised her we would go. So we actually booked a round trip flight from Copenhagen when we came back home in June. So now it's August of 2023 and we're in Denmark. And I remember we're at his parents' house and he comes to me. He's like, hey, I just got off the phone with the IRS and they said they flagged the transaction from the apartment complex. And at first I'm like pissed. I'm like, I asked you if this was going to be a problem. He's like, it's not going to be a problem. They're probably just going to take out like some taxes, not the full amount. They just need to review it and then we'll figure it out. But I'm not concerned. You shouldn't be concerned either, even though I was super concerned. He said they set a hearing date for September 10th. At this point, it's the middle of August. So I'm like, okay, so now I have to be struggling for another month. And so I'm frustrated, but he's also like trying to calm me down, but also like gaslighting me for feeling the way I'm feeling. And so I'm just, all my emotions, I'm just stuffing them in all the way. So we celebrate his mom's 70th birthday, and this is when I meet like his entire extended family, like dad and mom's siblings, all their friends, and I meet the older sister and she's there. At this point, she's pregnant with her second child. She's there with her first child. I meet her and she is just such a nice, kind, wonderful human. And I just can't picture her being this evil, crazy woman that beats his mom. And so I remember just feeling a little at odds about that, but you know, I'm still fully trusting my ex 100%. So a couple days after his mom's birthday, we're all hanging out at his parents' house and we're grilling. And I remember we all start to notice kind of around the same time that his dad does not look like he's doing well. And we're starting to get a little bit concerned. And that's when my ex's mom makes the decision, like, we need to take him to the hospital. And so we pack his bags, we load him up, we go to the hospital, and I'm freaking out because I don't know if things can take a drastic turn or not. And so we're waiting at the hospital, waiting to see what the doctors will say, and I will continue on in part 12. The Danish deception, part 12. So we are in Denmark at this point, and we just took his dad to the hospital, and I'm freaking out, very worried, don't know what's going on. after the doctors do some testing, they basically determine that he's still dealing with blood poisoning and he has like really high infection numbers, but they're not super concerned. And so we all take a deep breath and we're happy that it's not as serious as we thought it was going to be. And so after a couple days, he's released from the hospital and it's now time for me to head back to the States. And so obviously, I'm feeling all these emotions as I'm leaving. I'm sad because I'm leaving him because, again, we are still very much in love with each other, want to be with each other 24/7, so the goodbyes are still really, really tough. And at this point, I didn't know when he was going to be coming back to Dallas because he had a couple different work meetings going on. And so I fly back to Dallas and obviously feeling all the financial stress. Like, this is probably one of the roughest moments of our relationship, especially because we weren't together physically. So the day of his meeting with the IRS, I remember I was a big ball of nerves. Like, I couldn't even sleep that night. You have to keep in mind that I go to bed and I wake up knowing that I'm waking up to news. I don't know if it's good or bad. So I wake up and I call him. I go, how did it go? He goes, worse than I possibly could have imagined. I almost like expected it to have gone bad. I'm like, if it had gone good, I would have been more surprised. And I'm like, what now? He said, well, they scheduled a second hearing for my business account, January 10th. And currently my personal account is also under investigation. So they have put a hold on my assets for the next couple months while they continue to investigate, and there's another hearing scheduled for my personal account in October. So basically they froze his assets and told him that he only had like a specific amount of allowance that he was able to use from his money every single month. And I have never heard anything like this. I've never So basically they froze his assets and told him that he only had like a specific amount of allowance that he was able to use from his money every single month. And I have never heard anything like this. I've never known anyone that have had their assets frozen, and I didn't know how this worked. And obviously at this point, I'm definitely feeling like all the red flags. I'm like, this does not make any sense. But there's not a whole lot I can do. And at this point, I'm just like, the only thing I can do is trust him. There's no one in my life that I was talking to about any of this because I felt a lot of need to protect him and he wanted me to protect his image. And I remember telling him, like, I really want to talk to my family about this. Like, this is really stressing me out. And he's like, no, don't. Like, they're going to view me differently. So he very much talked me out of being able to disclose this stuff with my close people. So the last thing I want to do is just ramble about shit that does not matter. So I'm going to be honest with you guys. Not a whole lot happened between September of 2023 and November of 2023. The only thing big that happened was that I wanted him to be in Dallas. He wanted to be in Dallas. So I booked him a flight to come to Dallas. I am at this point fully financially supporting us. Like, I think he's getting like maybe like $4,000 a month that the IRS is like allowing him to use. And keep in mind, the Danish IRS is not called IRS. It's called SCAT, some other stuff. I can't even pronounce it. So that's why I'm saying the Danish IRS. So just a little side note. But October comes around. He's now in Dallas. He's been in Dallas for about a month. And we're struggling financially, but still so deliriously happy and in love, which is insane. But I cared about the money, but I loved him more than that. And our relationship was just based on this deep love that we had. And so the money was like almost secondary to the love that we shared. And so basically October comes around, he has the hearing, I'm nervous, and it ends up working out in our favor, and his account opens up in October. And I'm so happy. He like immediately sent me, I think, like $9,000. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is amazing. Like, we're gonna be able to like come out of this. And he said his business account, that was where the 10 million was supposed to be. That was supposed to be opened up not opened up. He was supposed to have a hearing set for January 10th. So that was when we were gonna figure out what was gonna happen. And I remember asking him, like, what do you think is going to happen? He's like, well, I've been like looking at research and there's a chance that they might put in like an 18-month to 24-month hold. I go, 18-month hold? And he said, yeah, but I don't think that's what it's going to be. But you know, we'll just cross that bridge when we get to it. Again, have never caught him in a lie at this point. And so basically his personal accounts opened up. So we're alleviated of a little bit of the financial stress, but it's still like a little bit stressful because obviously I had quit my job and I was doing real estate full time. And let me tell you, y'all, I was working my ass off, but it almost was like I was restarting my career because I hadn't been working in real estate much for that whole entire year. So I was 100% relying on him for maybe like the month of November, I would say, but the rest of the months I was still finding a way to make ends meet. I was still making a little bit of money from like doing like campaigns on Instagram, other things. So I still was like making a little bit. So December rolls around and his 90 days of being in the States is about to be up. So he went back to Denmark at the beginning of December. And so my plan was to go and meet him in 2 weeks. So we're going to spend 2 weeks apart. And so he's in Denmark for about a week and he sends me a message and he says, my dad's back in the hospital. And I was like, no. And so at this point, the plan was for me to go to Denmark and spend Christmas with his family. And this is going to be my first European Christmas. And I was so excited for the Christmas markets and all the things. But obviously that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is making sure he's okay, making sure his dad gets better. And so I'm going through all these emotions. Number one, I'm missing him. Number two, he's dealing with all of this and we have each other's location. So I can see that he's physically at the hospital in his hometown. So I can confirm that. And so obviously the plan was for me to come in 2 weeks. And he asked me, he's like, what are your thoughts if I move up your flight for you to come in a week? And I said, obviously I need to tie up some things for work, but I would love to be there for you. And he said, okay, like then let's do that. And so I moved up my flight. My sister was watching my dog and I leave. And at this point, the plan is for me to be gone for now 3 weeks. I was originally gonna be gone for 2 weeks. Now it's 3 weeks. And we're still feeling a lot of financial stress, but at this point, like I had like 3 deals in the pipeline. So there's money that's going to be coming in, but obviously we're still stressed out because like money's coming in. That does not mean the money's there. So we were like up to date on like bills, but still 100% stressing out. And so originally the plan was my ex said that he really wanted to go stay at this hotel called Hotel d'Angleterre in Copenhagen for 1 night before we went to his hometown to like be with his family. Cause his mom had said, I want you guys to just enjoy 1 day in Copenhagen in the Christmas markets before you come home. And so we were like, okay, we'll do that. And so he hadn't booked any of the hotels or anything. And like the day before I'm flying out to Denmark to go see him, he tells me that he just got charged this huge insurance payment for his 2 apartments. Obviously he sold the apartment complex, but his 2 singular apartments that are rented out, he got hit with an insurance payment and basically it wiped out like everything he had. So again, I'm annoyed. At this point, I'm just like sensing that a lot of this stuff is just bullshit, but I also am just like, it's the holidays, his dad's in the hospital, so I almost feel bad like coming at him whenever he's already dealing with so much. And he had said that his mom had given him money for like hotels, dinners, things in Copenhagen. She was fully aware of like the insurance payment and the financial position he was in, and she wanted to help. And again, she just wanted us to enjoy Copenhagen for 1 day before we came back. So we take the train back to Aalborg, and a good family friend picked us up from the train station. We went home, we had dinner, and then immediately we go to the hospital, see the dad, and like he looks sick, but he looks like he's like in decent spirits. And they said he was going to be home for Christmas. And so we were really, really happy about that. So over the course of the next couple days, we're going to the hospital like 2 times, 2, sometimes 3 times a day, just to like take his mom there, check on the dad, make sure everything's going okay. And then the dad comes home and like, obviously he's super weak and we're like helping him around. But regardless, we had a wonderful Christmas. And even though like we didn't have a lot of money, and I remember like I got him very, very cheap Christmas gifts that year, and same thing for me. I actually told him like, you don't even have to buy me anything. Like the gift is being here with your family, and he got me a few small things, but regardless, it was fine. And the day after Christmas, we had gone to a champagne party at one of his friends' homes. And, you know, I was excited. It wasn't very often that we like went and like hung out with like friends of his. It was very, very rare. And so we went and we were having a good time. And obviously I didn't know a whole lot of people that were there, but his best friend, the one that he was with when I met him in Croatia, he was there. And we were just chatting outside, and before we had left the house, my ex had told me, I really don't want to go out tonight. Like, I just want to go to this party and then come home. And I said, that's totally fine. And so We're at the party, we're outside just hanging out. I'm talking to his best friend. My ex is inside the home, and his best friend tells me, he goes, you guys should come out tonight, like please come out. And I was like, honestly, I'm down to go out, but my ex doesn't want to go out. And that was really weird for him because he always is down to like go out and have a good time. So I already thought it was a little strange. And then his best friend looks at me, he goes, oh, he probably doesn't want to run into any of his enemies from his past gambling addiction. I looked at him and I said, what gambling addiction? And his best friend looks at me and goes, you didn't know that he had a gambling addiction? And we will pick up the rest in part 13.